Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Hope you all are doing well and have recovered from um, all the Christmas festivities and all of that. So it's been for me it was a kind of rough going back to work yesterday, especially that's really cold in here. Hi, everybody. Say hi if I am actually live on both places on Instagram and I am on YouTube. Say hi, drop your sent of today. Hi, Sandra. Louis Barcaron, perfect. Mr. Basras, big howdy to everyone from Edmonton. Hi. Chucky's here. Corriente de Conscienta. Hi, Fragrant. Yeah, perfect. So today, guys, I'm very excited. I have watched Persolaise. I don't know. I think it's about since 2021 or maybe a little bit before. Thanks to my friend Charlene, who's my coworker and really introduced me to actually that people reviewed fragrances on YouTube, and he had few names and like that trusted, and she loves to listen to them, and one of them was Persolaise, and then I was like, the name is interesting. So then I look up, and yes, we have kind of they have some of our ethnic backgrounds are the same, so it was very interesting, and I've been watching him since then. You have watched him interview brands, creative directors, some of the people and the made fragrances that we all love. So without further ado, here is one and only Mr. Persolaise.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And I couldn't believe it. We had a practice run just a few minutes ago and everything worked fine. But to come into this one now, I had some issues and I had to download stuff. And I thought, oh no, it's not going to work. But I'm here and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. I'm saying I have got messages since yesterday, and it's like, how did you get him to agree to come to your life? And I was like, perseverance, my friends, perseverance.
Well, you asked very nicely, and I was very happy to be asked. I don't know why I'm getting a weird notification here now. Okay, no, that's nothing. Right, I'm gonna stop pretending that this is my thing and just let you take control.
All right. Okay. Gee, it just cut off for a second, but I think it's fine right now. So, how are you today? How was your holidays? Did you go anywhere? Did you take a break from fragrances?
We didn't go anywhere. We tend not to go away during the Christmas break. If you had asked me yesterday, I would have said that I'm absolutely fine. But as of yesterday, I mean, it literally sort of seemed to happen in the blink of an eye. I started sneezing and coughing, and I thought, oh, here we go. I'm going to get this thing that everybody else in the family seems to have got. And I thought I'd escaped it. So, but I am still feeling fine. So no, I'm very well. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the new year. I never really take a break from fragrances. I mean, obviously there are some times when I might wear them a bit less than on other, but I don't really. Yeah, it's usually pretty full on.
All right. What's your scent of today then? What a question that everyone wants to know.
Well, today, I wore Amouage's Purpose, just because they have announced the release of their exceptional extra version of Purpose, which they've called Purpose 50. So I thought, well, I should wear Purpose just to kind of revisit it. So yes, that is what I have been wearing today.
And a Purpose is the masculine collection. Is it? It's sorry, I can't.
Yeah, I mean, as I'm sure you feel the same way as well. We don't like to gender perfumes too much, but yes, Purpose comes in the masculine bottle. But of course, for the last few years, Amouage have moved away from this thing of calling, because they used to have the pattern where the perfume would have the same name, but it would be something man, something woman. They've moved away from that. I actually think Purpose would be really interesting on a woman. I mean, it's basically like a big frankincense vetiver, so I don't know why particularly that has to be masculine, but yes, it does come in the man's bottle.
Yeah, now I'm really curious. I love some of them kind of traditionally masculine ones, like even Royal Tobacco. I like and I wear, and I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
So before I get distracted, I have a track record of that. Let's have you respond to this question. Who is Persolaise? Can you tell us about yourself? It's like a job interview.
I'm so bad at job
He's like, I
interviews.
hate it.
So who? Okay, so Persolaise is an invention. Persolaise is all of the kind of the sort of nicer sides of me. No, it was what? It was in about 2010. Yeah, it was 2010 that I was doing some research for a fiction project because I've always written and I'm always writing, and my first love probably is fiction writing.
Mhm,
And I was kind of having an idea around something that might be to do with perfume, but at the same time, you probably remember, 2010 was round about the time that people were really, really getting excited about, the book by Luca Turin and Tanya Sanchez and the blogs that were around at the time. Um, I've always also been into perfume. I mean, I've been into perfume and interested in perfume since well before being a teenager. Um, so I was kind of playing around with all of these ideas, and it was my wife who said, "Look, you know how you're really, really into perfume, and you know how
mhm,
you write. How come you've never written about perfume?"
mhm,
And I didn't have an answer to that because actually I thought it was a very good question. But sometimes, you need somebody from the
mhm,
outside to state something
mhm,
really, really obvious to you. So, cut a long story short, I thought, oh well, maybe I could have a blog which would sort of impose a discipline on me and a structure to write about
mhm,
perfume, to figure out a way of writing about perfume, but it has to be anonymous because I don't want to kind of be associated with that too much. Um, so I thought, okay, well, if it's going to be anonymous, I need to make up a name, and I'm half Polish, half Iranian.
mhm,
I took the French because if it's perfume, it has to be French, right? So I took the French words for Polish, Iranian, and I thought, oh, this is kind of interesting. If you put them together, you could kind of make up Persolaise. It's quite good that Persolaise perfumes is alliterative. That sounds quite good.
mhm,
So I started the blog. But I genuinely, genuinely, absolutely did not think that, 15 years later, I would still be doing, that I would be doing this,
mhm,
that I would have a book, that I would have interviewed some of like my heroes, my
mhm.
genuine heroes, some of these people who have made these um, amazing creations. So yes, I mean, sometimes I think that Persolaise has become like this monster that I've created and sort of takes over my life completely. Because again, as you know, if you're going to do it, if you're going to attempt to do it well,
Mhm,
it takes time.
mhm,
Um, but Persolaise is also not entirely me. Mind you, I can hear my best friend's voice now saying that in his view, if the YouTube videos work, the reason they work is because I'm completely being myself.
mhm.
And he has told me that. So according to him, I am being totally myself. But I don't know. You get the
But I mean,
smile.
this
You
you
get the
can be
smiley me.
you can be your authentic self, but your life has different angles probably. Like it's
Yes.
not just the perfume, obviously, and there are
Yeah.
certain things that don't get aired. I mean, like we don't air about them in life, right? That's probably what you feel. And it's good to have that, like, and to kind of not be one dimensional, obviously, right? You can all
Yes.
invest in one. So tell me about Dariush Alavi. A little bit about your background. How old were you when you even I read something about your mom worked at a perfume store in Dubai,
Yes. Yeah.
and that's how kinda
Um,
you became interested?
so very, very, very quick biography. As I say, um, Polish mum, Iranian dad, born in the UK. We moved to Iran, spent a bit of time there, moved to Poland, spent a bit of time there, then moved to Dubai in the United Arab Emirates before it became like, the bling
Mm,
capital of the
mm,
world. And spent quite a lot of time there. That's where most of my upbringing was. In fact, I went through all of my teenage years there, and then I left the UAE to come back to the UK to go to university, and I've been in the
mm,
UK ever since. Um, when we were living, when we kind of started living in Dubai, I mean, I don't know the exact details because I was quite young, but I guess at some point quite early on, my mum decided she wanted to look for a job. I think she quite fancied the idea of being in retail. And, you know, for anybody who knows or remembers Dubai, how it was in the early 80s, it really, really was not the place that we
Mm,
know now. There was only one shopping mall, the Al Ghurair Centre, for anybody who knows it. In fact, the Al Ghurair Centre still exists, and it's quite different now, although some corners of it are recognizable. There was only like one department store where you could get Western style luxury goods. That was
mm,
called the Al Fajr department store that then
mhm.
burnt down in a fire. And there was one independent perfume boutique. It was called Abaya, as in, you know, the
All
Arabic
right, about it. Mm,
clothing, the clothing that women wear. And that was really the only independent place where you could get Western brands, where you could get
mm,
Dior and Chanel and Lancome skincare. And they had a position going there for a sales assistant. As far as I know, my mum kind of like bent the truth a little bit, as you do, and said that she had worked for Clinique back in Iran, because of course there was no way that anybody could check that, and she hadn't worked for Clinique at all. But she knew that if she watches this, I hope she doesn't mind me saying this. It's ancient history, but she knew
oh,
she knew Clinique products very well because she used
right, right,
them. But I mean, you know, you do what you have to do, right?
right.
Um, and she got the job, and she would come home with miniatures and samples and
Oh, nice.
testers, you know, testers that were nearly finished that she
Mhm,
was allowed to bring home. And I found myself being quite interested by this, you
mm,
know, and I guess it helps as well that, you know, perfume was not unusual in the context of the UAE. So
mm,
it was not like a kind of niche taste thing. You walked into a shop and you were hit over the head by perfume. Everybody wore perfume. Um, so I mean, okay, maybe not at the age of 7 or 8, but certainly as a kind of young teenager, when you went to school, all your friends wore something. And certainly
mhm,
if you had get-togethers with friends, I don't know if you had parties or birthday parties, absolutely everybody wore something. But I guess my interest just went up a few notches, and then it also never went away. Um,
mm. What
so
was the
that
first bottle of perfume that you've ever owned?
I don't know. I don't know because it would have been something that my mum would have brought home. I
Okay.
mean, it could well have been Fahrenheit,
Mm,
although probably not, because I think Fahrenheit is what, like 97, 98, and I'm sure
yeah.
I had something from like 1983, 1980. It could have been Cacharel pour Homme.
Mm.
It could have been Benetton Colors. I just, and I wish I knew, but
What about
already
first bottle
one
that you bought with your own money? Do you remember that?
that no, no, that may well have been because even when I went to university, I would have gone with several bottles that like my mum would have given me. I would imagine that one of the first bottles that I bought for myself would have been something that back in the day was kind of quite ordinary and high street and standard, probably something like CK1,
Mm,
which I still to this day really really like, even though I don't wear it so much. But it probably would have been something quite
mm,
mainstreamy like that, because I would have run out of CK1 and I would have thought, oh, that's not that expensive, I can afford that.
mm, mhm, mm,
Um, I wore Guerlain's L'Instant pour Homme, but I don't think I
mm,
ever bought a bottle of that for myself. I think they always came from my mum, I think. I wore Dior's Higher, but that came from my
mhm.
mum. And then after that, you know, Christmas presents. So I get asked this a lot, and I'm afraid I don't have that, you know,
Yeah,
that moment when I made that purchase and I thought, oh wow, this is because I always had perfume, I'm afraid.
because it's part of life, right? Like, when was the first, like, if somebody asked me what was the first piece of clothes that you bought for yourself from your own money, I have no idea, because it's part of life. Like, you buy clothes. Like,
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I bought with my money first time.
No,
So it's
and
kind of the same
absolutely
thing.
for me it was absolutely the same. I mean, I remember my Iranian grandmother always having, you know, never ever being without a bottle of Yardley's lavender.
Mm, yeah.
I remember at our house in Iran, my mum had a bottle of opium, but I don't think she wore it. I think she was given it as a gift, and maybe she didn't like it or something, but it was always there. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, yeah, I interrupted you like 100 times. So you kind of wore fragrances as a part of culture and like obviously in Dubai, but when did you like for me there was a moment that I was like, oh my God, like outside like Dior and Chanel and whatever, there are other brands, there are like niche perfumes. Like when was that? Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
no, that's an interesting one because even though I had this great love for perfume, the the market that was available in the UAE at that time was very very particular.
Mm,
It was what we would now call quite mainstream.
mm,
So it was obviously Dior, Chanel, Lancome, Calvin Klein, Paloma Picasso came along, and it was probably only like maybe in the late 90s, and maybe actually even after that, that I started becoming aware that there was
mm,
this other world.
mhm,
And of course, like for so many people, the real big, the door opener was the Luca Turin and Tanya Sanchez book
mm,
for various reasons. They were my first exposure, or amongst the first times that I was exposed to this idea of the perfumer.
mhm,
And 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 then of course then you start being able to make connections, and you start reading more, and you realize that this thing that you've always somehow felt connects CK1 with Chanel number
mhm.
5 could be this thing called aldehydes.
Right.
Or
Mhm,
or when you smell, I don't know, this perfume from L'Artisan Parfumeur and you smell this perfume from Hermes,
mm,
lo and behold, they were made by the same person. And you suddenly start
mm,
going, you have so many penny dropping moments. So that probably was more like 2005, 2008. And then we started traveling in Europe a bit more. And I would come across some brands where I'd think, well, you know, I've never heard of you. Like, what is this?
mhm,
What is this? I remember the first time seeing Serge Lutens.
mm.
But that was, of all places, that was at a Sephora
Oh, wow.
in Nice.
Mm,
But I remember seeing these quite striking looking bottles and the imagery and thinking, well, who are you? But and then a bit of you thinks, well, they're in Sephora, so they must be legitimate. And
right, right.
so yeah, that came later. But um, again, I'm not sure I could tell you. Probably one of the first niche in inverted commas purchases that I made would have been something like an Andy Tower perfume.
Oh, okay.
Something like Lodestar Memories. I remember having like a sort of little brain popping, brain exploding moment when I found out that there were all these Chanels that I'd never known about, like the exclusives.
Right, right.
And I remember going and like going into the Chanel boutique on Bond Street and smelling Sycamore and smelling Coromandel and thinking, well, this isn't fair. How come we have to, why isn't this in all of the shops? Of course,
I
this was,
know.
yeah. So yeah, that came later. That came later.
Okay. So so when kind of you started like discovering these things, like and kind of looking more into it, did you ever do like a formal like a course or you read something about perfumery, where things are coming from, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I did go on a bit of a binge. I don't know if you can tell, you probably can't tell, but some of the books that are
Mm,
here are almost like sort of perfumery handbooks. You probably can't make out, but
no.
there's one there called The Introduction to Perfumery, which is like this
Mm,
kind of Bible that I think a lot of people have if they're doing this any sort of perfumery courses in
mhm,
the UK. So yeah, I did go on a binge. I did a few courses, but they were not, I'm not a trained
right.
perfumer. They were like 2-day, 3-day
All right.
things. But everything helps, right? And I started buying raw materials. I started dabbling a little bit. I started making a few accords. People kept talking about this combination, this amazing combination of rose and
Mm,
patchouli, and I thought, well, I want to smell this for myself. What
mhm,
is this combination of rose and
mm,
patchouli? And I've always got like a smallish collection of some of the main raw materials, particularly the
mm,
naturals. Um, so yes, I guess the education came that way. And and I did mess around with making some perfumes for a while. I don't know if have you ever heard of Vero Kern?
No.
She's no longer with us, sadly. She was a Swiss lady. She was based in Zurich, very very good
Mhm.
friends with Andy Tower, and she had her own brand called Vero Profumo.
Oh, okay.
Um, really really beautiful perfumes. I mean, really really stunning perfumes. And she and I struck up a correspondence. And actually, I got to the point where a few things that I made, I sent her, and
Oh,
she
wow.
was very encouraging, and she sort of said, "Oh yeah, you know, keep
Mhm.
going. This is a good idea." But ultimately, I don't think that's where my, you know, if I have any talents, I'm not sure that that's where they lie. I enjoyed it, um, but I don't know. I also found it quite frustrating. I'm a
Yeah.
words person, but that's why
Mhm.
if somebody has actually finished a perfume that has got a structure and even if I may not like it, if it's a finished piece of work, I have so much respect for that accomplishment because I
Mhm.
have got some small idea, I've got some inkling
Mhm.
actually of how hard it is. It's not easily done.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes you do exactly the same things, same amount, and it just the result is different, and you need to kind of wait. For me, it was a lot of, you can't be just cook it like a soup, like you need to
Yeah.
you need to wait to add, I guess, kind of like soup, but you wait to add ingredients. Like you have to wait and add some macerate, and then you can maybe in 2 or 3 days you can add something else. It's just there's a lot of waiting and patience
Yeah.
that is required for that, and not always the same recipe comes out the same. Like that's very that's interesting. So
Yeah.
then you started you kind of knowing about niche perfumes and whatnot. Then how did you go about it? Did you like at the time, like were you buying samples? Like were you buying the bottles? Like how did you
I guess uh, I guess a little bit of everything. I mean, when I first started in 2010, um, I just wrote about stuff that I already had
Mhm.
in my collection. So yes, if I had a bottle, I would review it. If I got a sample, I would review it. Um, you know, if people get to know you in shops, they
Mhm.
start being
Yeah.
quite generous with samples. So I found myself going to Les Senteurs, which is like the sort of probably the oldest, most established
Mhm.
independent perfumery in London, and people would be very generous with samples there. So that helped. But I think also it was a case, one of the very very few occasions in my life of a case of being in the right place at the right time, because I started the blog in the same year when Harrods did a big perfumery exhibition. It was probably the
Mhm.
last. They haven't done a big perfumery
Mhm.
exhibition like that since then. It was in 2010. It was called the Perfume Diaries,
Mhm.
and it was really well done. It was in a relatively small space, but they packed so much into it, and there was so much to see. And they also got some very interesting people. They got representatives from Givenchy. They got Jean-Paul Garlin. They got Thierry
Mhm.
Vasseur. They got Linda Pilkington from Mormont Jane. You know, really interesting
Mhm.
speakers. And I signed up to go to some of these talks, and I also got in touch with the editor of Base Notes, who is now a good friend, but at the time I didn't know him. And I said, look, if I were to write about these events for you, would you publish the stories? And he said, well, you know, I can't pay you, but yeah, let's see
Mhm.
what you can do. Um, and it just so happened that when I was sitting outside the venue and I'd ordered myself a coffee, I mean, this really happened. I was sitting at a kind of bench table at this
Mhm.
cafe, and then this group of people emerged and they planted themselves next to me. And the person who planted herself directly next to me was, I now know, the then PR of Garlin, who I am still in touch with. And she was doing what every good PR does. She was being kind of very protective of the person that she was
Mhm.
protecting, and kind of giving me a dirty look as though to say, could you kind of move over there? Because of course the person she was protecting was Jean-Paul Garlin. And I sat there and I just thought, I'm not moving, because I know who that is. So I kind of turned around and very as sweetly as I could, I said, oh, excuse me, is that Monsieur Jean-Paul Guerlain? So she kind of looks at me as though to say, okay, that's, yeah, I wasn't expecting. And then I pulled out a box of Naema and Abbey Rouge, and
Oh.
I said, oh, do you think he might be able to sign these for me?
Mm.
And when he saw the bottle of the box of Naema, his eyes just lit up, because
Mm.
apparently that is one of his most favorite things that he's ever made.
Mm.
Anyway, to get to the point, I get chatting to the PR. She sort of learns a little bit more about me, and then she takes down my details, because there's obviously something that went off in her head that sort of thought,
Right.
okay, this guy's actually serious. He's not, just some
Mm.
random who's just turned up. And Guerlain was the very first brand that sort of sent me a review sample, a PR sample.
Oh, wow.
And they sent me a sample of
Like,
the
what a
cologne.
brand to start with.
I know, very, very lucky. But I mean, the story that I've just told you is absolutely 100% true.
Mm.
And whenever I meet up with the PR, we kind of try to meet up with each other once or twice a year. I always sort of talk about the fact that she was one of the first people who kind of believed in me and supported me. The sample that she sent was of the cologne that Thierry Vasseur had made, the Cologne du Parfumeur.
Mm.
And then, of course, as you can imagine, these things snowball. The PRs are all, the perfume world is a very,
Mm.
very small world. The PRs all talk to each
Mm.
other. So I would imagine some of them might have said, oh, he's okay, this
Mm.
guy. He's not.
Mm. Mm.
And then another really, really big deal was within about 2 years of having the blog, or less than 2 years, somebody recommended me to somebody who recommended, it kind of went on like that. And I was
Mm.
commissioned to write my little book. And then, of course, even though we're in this digital age, there's still something about a physical book. And as soon as I got in touch
Yeah.
with people and said, I'm writing a book, then it was like, oh, okay, how can we help?
Mm.
Um,
Loose knot. Is that how you say it? Loose
yes,
knot?
yeah. That's there somewhere. And I've always kind of maintained the same principles in my relationship with the brands, and they now know that if I like something, I will give it a positive review. If
Mm.
I don't, I will give it a negative review, and they get the deal. So now I'm in the fortunate position of having quite a lot of things sent to me, but I still order samples as well.
Mm.
I write to brands. Sorry, no, I should say I don't write to brands. I actually sometimes make a point of not writing to brands and just going and ordering discovery sets as
Mm.
though I'm just like any other
Mm.
customer, because I've never really done the thing of getting in touch with a brand saying, I'm Persolaise, send me your stuff. If they get in touch with me,
Mm-hmm.
in fact, I did this today as well. I got in touch with a brand got in touch with me, and then I write back and I say, I really appreciate your taking the time to write. I would love to try your work, but please can I just point out that I can't guarantee to write about any samples
Right.
that I receive. And if I do review something, I can't guarantee that the reviews will necessarily be positive. And
Mm-hmm.
invariably, people write back and they say, okay, yeah, we get it, because usually they've done their homework.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a bit of everything, ordering samples, buying things. I still buy perfumes.
What was the
Um,
last bottle of perfume that you bought?
that I can answer, because that's an easy one. I treated myself for Christmas to a bottle of Arquist's Almond Suede.
You darn. I was, you know what? I was on there. I wanted that bottle and it was gone in less than 3 seconds, like in an etiquette. And I'm like,
Really? Well, I
etiquette
mean,
is a
I
kind of, it's not from the brand, obviously, because I'm in Canada, it's really
okay.
shipping perfumes is difficult. So we have a store. So I was actually in Miami. I smelled Vinice Rocco, or is that one of them? I think it's called Vinice Rocco.
Oh,
It's
see. Okay, so I would say Venice Rococo, but yes, it could be what. Yeah.
whatever. I'm trying to
I know the one you.
Italianize it.
Yeah.
Help me out. So then I smelled almond suede and I really liked it. So when I came back and I was like, damn, I didn't get it. And then I went to Etiquette website and they were sold out. So I will get a bottle of that one. That's really, really nice.
Yeah, that was the one, because by this stage I also already thought that I might put it on my list of the top 10 perfumes of the year.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, it would be quite nice to have the full bottle for the video. So I just thought, okay, I would like to have this, and I'm glad I got it. But Yeah, so that was the last one. That is one question I have been able to answer relatively succinctly.
I would not be able to answer that because I buy so much.
Ah,
Sorry.
okay, interesting.
That's the problem. But anyway, so we have a question here. Someone says, actually, I went and looked for your book because I wanted to get your book and I couldn't. There's no link. I didn't. It's gone on Amazon. It's not there. Where can we find a copy?
Not very, very easily. The book was always a limited edition.
Oh.
The publishers at the time had a series called Le Snob. They did one on whiskey, they did one I think on wine, they did one on shoes, and I was asked to write the one on perfume, and it was always going to have a strictly limited run. You know, I didn't get royalties or anything like that. I just got like a sort of set fee because they knew exactly how many they were going to publish. And as far as I know, it's sold out. Some copies do pop up sometimes on, you know, on resellers like Amazon, like Abe Books, but sometimes people have sent me links, and there are people who charge silly money for it, which I don't understand. I mean, I don't know if they're actually getting those sums that they're charging, because I mean, because people can charge what they want, right? But doesn't mean that somebody's actually going to pay that. So no, and lots of people have said to me, "Will there be a follow-up?" Certainly, as far as that publisher is concerned, no, I don't think there will be a follow-up. I think they're done, which I think is a little bit of a shame, because it's been long enough now. It's been long enough to do a second edition. But yeah, it's gone. It's gone. You can't get it unless you get really lucky and find it somewhere secondhand.
Have you ever thought of writing a book on your own, like on perfumery, separate than that?
I mean, yes, I've thought about it, and I've always decided against it. And I think, you know, this one I couldn't say no to. This was an opportunity that was presented to me. I also, you know, without going into details, I kind of got lucky because, as far as I know, I wasn't actually supposed to be the writer of that book, but you know, things happened, and I got lucky. I turned out to be the writer of the book. And obviously, when an opportunity like that lands in your lap, you can't really say no, because it's great to be able to say that I've got this perfume book. But my main love or ambition is still to focus on the fiction, and writing takes up so much time and is so upsetting is not the right word, because it's not upsetting, but it's so it's such an upheaval for me, right? I'm not one of these people who writes very, very easily. That I think, okay, there is only one kind of major writing project that I can devote my time to at any given time. And so no, I want to keep going with the fiction. You know, having said that, if a publisher actually came to me and said, look, we've got this idea for a perfume book, and you know, that would be different. And if they said this is what it would be like, then I'd probably think, oh goodness, because you know as well, it's like if you turn something down, you know somebody else is going to do it, and then you think, oh, how will I cope if somebody else has to, I don't know.
Yeah, but you write fiction.
Yes, I try to write fiction. Yeah.
And you published like
my short stories have been out there. I had a short story that was broadcast on BBC Radio for quite some time ago now, a long time ago. I've had a few short stories appear in magazines, actually in a Canadian university magazine. Prism International, the magazine was called. That's also going back a few years. So yes, short stories, yeah. But the ambition is to have something longer out there, and you know, we keep trying, we keep plugging away.
Yeah. There's so much time, and you know, just even doing this, like with the review of the free. I don't know how you do it, like, and on it,
well,
actually,
I have no
maybe
idea myself. Actually,
do you sleep? Because it doesn't sound like.
Well, shall I take your question seriously?
Yes,
because I mean, yes, I do sleep, but to
not literally.
to answer the question seriously, I am the guy in the family who invariably has to say, no, I can't. No,
Mm,
sorry, I'm busy. No, maybe if you'd asked me 4 weeks ago, I might have said yes, but you can't ask me with 5 minutes notice.
mm,
I am that annoying guy.
mm,
And most of the members of my family are very, very understanding and very supportive, and they get it. And, they know that, because, most of the time I'm not seen, because most of the
mm,
time I'm either huddled over this desk or another
mm,
desk, and I'm
mm,
either scribbling away. I wake up really, really early to try and get an hour's writing done in the morning. And yes, a lot of the time I get overwhelmed, and my better half will sort of say to me, I think you need to slow down now. um, but I also say, I sort of say, but these things will not happen by themselves. It's
right. Yeah.
so yeah, it's choices and priorities. But quite often, if somebody phones up and says, oh, we were thinking of going out and having lunch or something, I have to say, really
Mm,
sorry, I can't.
mm,
Which, yeah.
So you're quite scheduled and kind of routine, like trying to
Yes.
get things going. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
One question. I mean, I have heard, I think I've heard that your favorite fragrance of all time is Naima. Is that correct? Or could be anything else?
um That's interesting, because no, I don't. I'm not. I mean, it is up there. I think it is amazing, and I absolutely love it. I think. I mean, it's a horrible question, right? It's a horrible question for you as well. If I'm asked to choose one for myself, I usually say Guerlain's Abbey Rouge.
Oh, okay, okay.
But Nema is amazing, and I think. I mean, if it's not my favorite one to smell when my wife wears it, then it's definitely like one of the
Mm,
top three
mm,
for her to wear. But yeah, I mean, I think it's extraordinary. I think it's amazing, and I
yeah,
think it's such a shame that it's becoming harder and harder to find.
I know. Especially the extrait version, like it's
Well, I think
gone.
that's gone. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I finally I found a small bottle of it like about a few months ago, and it's amazing like how it smells. And I'm not even a rose fan, like
no,
for God's sake.
no, no, no.
Um,
It is amazing.
so another question that everyone wants to know is like before we kind of I'll ask a little bit more general questions. How many bottles of perfume do you own?
I don't know. I'm too scared to count. Um, I mean, okay, probably the answer is too many,
Hmm.
because they have infiltrated many, many parts of the house. And very often, my wife will sort of say, everywhere I go, it's perfume. I open drawers, it's perfume. And she's not lying. Um, I mean, yeah, it is obviously it's hundreds. But yeah, I don't know exactly. Are you aware of the brand Ostens?
No.
Ostens, really good brand actually. But they
Mm,
haven't released any new perfumes for a while. They're a UK-based brand founded by two guys, Christopher Yu and Laurent Delafon, who also have a lot of experience in perfume PR and perfume
mm,
distribution and perfume consultancy, and it's a really, really beautiful brand. Anyway, the reason why I mentioned them is because Christopher Yu is a real, real perfume geek. I actually interviewed him
mm.
on my channel, and I forget the number of perfumes that he has, but it is an astonishing number. I mean, I think it's thousands.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not on that level. Um, I mean, maybe one day I'll have to like count them or catalog them or something, or maybe that would, I don't know, maybe that would take the fun out of it or something. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. It
Do
is
you know?
hard
Do you
when
know how many you have?
no, you're not supposed to ask me questions.
Okay, no, that's true. That
No,
is
no,
very,
no.
very true. That is very true.
What I actually don't know because at the point that I stopped counting, we were at 600. Um,
Yeah, I would
and I
imagine.
have
I would
like,
imagine I'm probably comparable. Maybe a bit less. Maybe a bit less.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always coming and going though. Like I do like
Yeah.
the bottles I do blind buy because I live somewhere that I don't have access to things really.
Okay.
So it's a lot of blind buy and then they're kind of like gone. So tell me about what you think like from 2010 to now. It's been 14 years, 15 years almost.
Mm.
What do you think? She lost count after 5,000 audience sales. There are people who are counting my perfumes, though, I know, because they know what I get, and they have far better idea than what I have than I do.
Okay.
Sorry, that was just a little
No, 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 it's fine.
blur. Um, so what do you think has changed in the world of perfumery from, like, let's say, I wanna know from 2010 to 2025 in the world of niche fragrances, what have you noticed? Trend shifts, change, good, bad, and also if you care or if you want, I want you to comment on general fragcom from 2010 to 2025.
I mean, okay, those are big questions. So you may have to kind of like, call time when I'm going a bit too much. The industry, I think, obviously has changed quite a bit in the last 15 years. I don't know if a lot of the changes have been for the better. Um, I okay, one thing to sort of say, I've never really particularly liked this term niche perfume
Mm,
because I've never really fully understood what it's meant. And some people have taken it to mean a style of
mhm,
perfumery. But of course, it's not, because there are plenty of perfumes out there that smell like a mainstream perfume, but
mhm,
come to you from an
mhm,
an independent brand. I think the only kind of useful distinction that you can make is whether a perfume brand company is independent and solely owned, or whether it's part of a bigger conglomerate. But even that gets you into kind of interesting waters, because by that definition, Chanel is totally independent, right? They are still an independently owned company, even though they also happen to be one of the biggest in the world. So those definitions only take you so far. But I think there's definitely, in the last 15 years, been an increase in this idea that setting up a perfume brand, making perfumes, is a bit of an easy way of making a fast buck. Because if you have a significant amount of money, I mean,
mm,
I haven't, but there are people out there for whom, I don't know, £40,000 or £50,000 is is an amount that they have easy access to.
mhm,
It's an amount that they can play with.
mhm,
And if that is an amount that you can play with, then actually setting up a perfume brand is not that hard.
mhm,
Hiring a well-known independent perfumer is not that hard. Getting some bottles, making a website is not that
mhm,
hard. You can kind of do it.
mhm,
And I think because for some people on that level you can do it, they kind of think, oh well, it can't be that hard, this perfume game. Let's have a go. Let's do it. Let's make a perfume brand. And I think what that has led to is just an increase in the number of really, really uninspired, dull,
mhm,
boring, predictable, derivative releases out there. I'm sure I've told the story on my channel before, so apologies to people who've heard it before. But I remember reading an interview with an actor. I think it may have been Colin Firth or something, and he said that before he won his Oscar, he would be sent like maybe 50 scripts a year, and out of those 50, two or three would be really interesting.
mhm.
Then when he got his Oscar, he would be sent like 5,000 scripts a year,
Oh,
and
wow.
out of those 5,000, two or three would be
Mhm,
interesting.
mhm,
And I think that's the same with perfumery. We have got a lot of stuff out there where you think, oh my God, not this old thing again.
mhm,
And yet, in any given year, we do have the gems out there. We do still have
mhm,
beautiful things being
mhm,
made, but they're harder to find because you have to cut through all of this rubbish
mhm,
to get to them.
mhm,
You have to you have to be so selective, and you kind of think, okay, this brand has just popped up and has this really, really loud marketing campaign that they've spent so much money on. Do I give them my time? And obviously, if you give your time to one brand, then that's going to be invariably another brand that
mhm.
doesn't get your time. You
Right,
have to, like an example that comes to my mind straight away, and sorry if you don't want me to be specific, but like the Korean brand Born to Stand Out.
right.
I just think, what, who, this is, and yet it seems to be successful. So, what do I know?
I
So
think
that's
it
that.
appeals to certain crowd, that brand with the
Yeah,
message
yeah,
that
yeah,
they're giving.
yeah.
I was actually shocked to see their I went to Exxon's
Okay.
last year, And it's shocked to see the messages, and I'm like, "Not kind of rude," but then I think that stands out to some
Yeah,
crowd that
yeah.
like that style, yeah.
So that's definitely happened. I think, and think also there's been a bit of a like a parting of the seas. I think 15 years ago, you had like your sort of like really, really small people working in their back room type independent brands. And then you kind of had a kind of middle ground where brands were independent, but actually they had a fair amount of distribution.
Mm,
And then you kind of had your mainstream brands. Of course, a lot of the mainstream brands bought up those guys
mhm,
in the middle. And then you have like this chasm in between. Obvious example that comes to mind is Frederick Malle.
mhm,
Hardly a week goes by now without somebody getting in touch with me saying, "Oh my goodness, isn't it sad what's happening with Frederick Malle?" And I don't even know if it is sad what's happening with Frederick Malle, but once that idea is out there, the received wisdom is that, oh yes, that's a brand that's going down. Once your reputation starts going down, it's very, very, very hard to push it back up
yeah,
again. And yes, there seems to be definitely a lot of style over substance. And I think it's very, very much harder now for independent brands to not just be reactive.
mm,
Because so many independent brands now, they feel that in order to make themselves noticed, they have to make perfumes that are like, like some really big, loud
mm,
leather
mm, mm,
frankincense bomb
mm,
that shouts from several million
mhm,
miles away. Um, and you don't have to do that. That's why, for example, I was so pleased when Liz Moores, the perfumer at the UK brand Papillon, when she
mhm,
made a perfume called Angelique,
mhm,
which in many ways is like the kind of anti-niche independent perfume. It's like a very, very sort of classic French perfume in
yeah,
some ways, but she's done it so well, and I know
mhm.
that it's very, very highly regarded, and I don't think we have enough of that sort of stuff. Fragcom, you know how I was saying a few minutes ago about how I'm the guy who always has to say no to, family gatherings and things like that. I also often don't have the time to keep tabs on Fragcom as much as I'd like to. You know, I try to keep tabs on my good friend Neil Chapman, who writes the Black Narcissus blog. He's based in
Mhm,
Japan. I do my very, very best to keep tabs on what he's writing. I try to, like if a new video comes out from some of the big American reviewers, I kind of try to see what
mhm.
they're doing. But I guess I'm a little bit out of it. I don't know. I mean, what's sort of behind your question? Because maybe if you sort of like, if you give
Yeah.
me a steer, then
So I think, like, I mean, that's my personal view. Like, it's been a lot of like, there's been reviewers after reviewers, like on YouTube, like not really official ones, but they're like the YouTube reviewers and out there, and like there's so much drama, like, and then like so much, conflicts between them all, and just kind of like,
okay,
this, people who go to this person's and their reviews and bashing the other one, like things like, all the jerks on Reddit, and like becomes a place to kind of, you know, bash each other, or what, or people, whether, I mean, maybe it was started to a place to be able to critique the fragrance reviewers, but like you'd see sometimes material out there and like, I don't know. And then there's kind of also the idea of living your private life publicly, and that becomes a little bit, um
I mean, okay, so I don't Google myself,
I
and
do. I have Googled you. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I doubt that there has been very much written about me out there, but I suppose my response would be if I feel that I have the right, if I can use that word, if I feel that I have the right to come on and express my views on perfumes, then I guess people have the right to go onto some forum or platform and express their views on me. But I don't necessarily need to know about it. I mean, they can do
Mm,
that. They can. That's why I've very often also said to perfume brands, I've told them that I don't think they should really pay very much attention to reviews. I
mhm,
think I think they should kind of do what they do and be creative and try not to pay attention too much to what's happening. And our role is to pass commentary and to look for trends and to put things in context and to sort of make connections. Um, so yes, I don't know. I don't know. I
What
mean,
do you
you
think
know,
of in light of sorry, go ahead.
no,
Cut
I
you
was
off.
going to say that, you know, you use the word community or fragcom community. I'm very, very touched that so often, if people leave a positive comment on one of my videos, one of the things they focus on specifically is they say, you have built such a nice community.
Mm-hmm.
And I never even particularly set out to do that. But I think there is something in that. Like, for
Mm-hmm.
example, people are allowed to share any views they want.
Mm-hmm.
But if those views are shared in an inappropriate way, or if they
Yeah.
get too personal, I have absolutely no
Mm-hmm.
hesitation in blocking people, because I think I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you know, life is too short. If there are so many times where people have sort of written and said, oh, I found your take on this perfume very, very boring, and that I usually, my response to that is, okay, thank you for the feedback.
Right.
um but if they say something like, oh, only a, bleep 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 would like a
Right.
perfume like this, thank goodness the YouTube thing actually, holds those comments
Yeah.
so I can review them. And somebody like that, I just think, well, no, if you want to express yourself in that way, there are other places where you can do that, not here.
Sure.
um so maybe that's one thing, because I think it is important for me, for people who watch the channel, to feel that they can say anything they like, as long as they do it in a sort of respectful way,
Mhm.
um, and also listen to others. So hopefully the Persolaise community is quite nice.
Because I'm very conscious. I like it went by so fast. I just took a a clock and it's like 12:51. What? So we are
It does
about
go
50
quickly.
minutes into,
It does
but
go
and I don't
quickly.
want to hold you like too far here. But I have a couple very important questions
Go
here.
on, go on, go on.
One of the things that actually someone in the comments asked is that, was there any perfumes in your collection that you would kind of you associate with Iran? Have you ever actually tested any Iranian brands? Because they are coming out with some perfumes. No.
No, that's a good question. So the answer to that one very quickly is no, I don't know of any Iranian brands, but there is definitely one perfume that I automatically associate with Iran, even though I never smelt it in Iran. And that's curious. It's from Etat Libre d'Orange,
Mhm.
and it's their Jasmine and Cigarettes, which was composed by
Oh,
Antoine
interesting.
Mesongier. And I mean, it sounds like a kind of silly story to say, because when my dad told me what he told me, I kind of thought, oh, okay, well, that figures. But each time I smelt it, I would think of my grandparents' house in Shiraz, and
Mm,
specifically the outside of their house in Shiraz.
mm.
And one time I told my dad this, and he said, well, that's because they had like a huge jasmine bush growing outside their house.
Like,
And I
duh.
thought, oh, okay, well, that would be a good reason. But I think there is something very, very specific about that quality of jasmine. And I also had a very, very similar experience with Smoke by Acro,
Mm,
composed by Olivier Cresp. Because when we were living in Iran, we lived in Bandar Abbas, which is a kind of town in the south
mm,
of Iran, as I'm sure you know. And quite often we would go and visit my dad's aunts and uncles, so like my great aunts and uncles. And there was one aunt in particular who always had like this sort of clay, hubbly bubbly thing. What's the Farsi word for it? I can't even remember the Farsi word for it. And I don't know why. I don't know whether there was something particular about the tobacco that she smoked, but the only tobacco perfume that has taken me back to her house in southern Iran is Smoke by Acro.
oh, wow.
And I
Interesting.
couldn't tell you why, but
Oh,
even now, each time I smell it, I'm there. I can picture the kind of long driveway lined by trees and like fruit trees. And she would always be like sitting outside on the kind of, I suppose, like veranda thing, like on a
mm,
mat. So, yes, I mean, very, very strongly associate those with Iran, but I couldn't even tell you why exactly.
wow. The last question. Has there been any moment that you thought, I'm going to stop doing this?
What, like in,
Is
in
there-
the in the last week? um, I mean, okay, you said moment, so yes, there have been moments. I think it's when I get really, really overwhelmed and when I kind of think the time is becoming a little bit too fraught and, why am I doing this? But no, those moments pass very, very quickly. But the moments that last a little bit longer are the ones where I think, okay, should I be doing a bit less?
Mm,
Even though sometimes it also feels like I'm already doing a kind of, like you know as well as I do. There are so many people out there who seem to be able to post like a video every day.
right, right.
You know, I'm grateful if I can do a couple of videos
Mm,
on a Sunday.
mm.
So no, I don't see an end in sight at the moment. I'm enjoying it. I still, when I find out that a new perfume is coming out from Guerlain or whoever, I still get really excited to try them. Um,
Does it this review of fragrances? For me, I tried to do the reviews of because I have from the Liz exclusive, from the ones that I really like. I have like the three formulation of them, like ADP, DT, and the Parfum versions. I tried to do like a put together one video of comparing the three formulations and whatnot. And to be honest, I felt it was quite onerous because then I had to wear EDP for the full day, EDT for a full day, and the next day would be the parfum, and then put up a video, and then that's just one,
yeah.
comparison of things. And I was listening to someone else that they have talked about the burnout, that sometimes this reviewing stops them from wearing what they really like because they're trying to, wear this thing. Have you ever had that?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, because usually, 9 times out of 10, if I'm wearing something, it's because I'm thinking I might write about it or talk about it in a video.
Hmm.
And at the very, very most, I think you might be able to do 2 perfumes a day like that. But actually, usually it's probably only one
Hmm.
if you
Hmm.
really want to kind of see what it's going to be doing 4 or 5 hours later or something.
Hmm.
Um, so yes, it is often in times like holidays, like the Christmas holidays or the summer or something, where I think, okay, now just wear what you enjoy. So absolutely that happens. But sometimes I also wonder about people who blog and write about skincare because they're writing about products where I kind of think, okay, but don't you have to like try this for 6 weeks to see if
Correct.
it's made any difference? And I did actually ask somebody once, and they said, well, you can't really do it for 6 weeks. So if it kind of smells nice and if it kind of feels nice on my face, then I give it a good review. And I think, well,
What about it gives you the rash in the second
what
week?
do you? So
Yeah.
yeah, at least we don't have that problem. At least we should be able to come to some kind of a conclusion after about 8 hours or something.
Last question. I'm
Yes, yeah, go
squeezing
for it.
these questions in.
Go for it.
Do you have any favorite note in fragrances?
The answer I would like to give is no, because I think any note can be done in an interesting way, and any note can be done in a boring way. But I do find myself gravitating towards incense and leather.
Mm.
Um, so if you tell me that something is an incense, you tell me something is a leather, that's probably going to be a slightly easier sell than if you told me that something is going to be like marine or ozonic.
Okay. So those are
Then
not your type, marine or ozonic.
then you've got a harder task ahead of you to convince me, I think. Yeah.
How do you stay objective when that happens? Like you're now, let's say, like you're reviewing a fragrance like that. Like for me, it's Narcissus. I can't handle Narcissus. So it's just
Okay.
I can't be fair to it.
Well, I think objectivity is overrated. And I think objectivity actually is a little bit of a kind of a unicorn. Um, Again, sorry, because people who have watched the channel will have heard the story before. But I'm also a huge film buff. And
Mm,
actually, my degree is in journalism and film. And for many, many years, I've read the UK's, if not the world's, top film magazine. It's called Sight and Sound. And every year they do a poll of the best films of the year, but also every 10 years they do a poll amongst critics and directors of the best films of all time. And that's all very interesting, and they collate the results, and they kind of add up the scores, and they come up with this list of the best films.
mm,
But actually, for me, what is much, much more interesting is when they show you the individual votes of all of the people who have voted. Because
mm,
then you see that when a film is selected to be the best film of the year, it's quite often actually because maybe like 10% of the voting group
Mm.
gave it a score, whereas the majority of the people who voted didn't actually even have it on their list at all.
Oh,
But you know, film criticism is still
right.
held up as this
Mm.
as this very, very serious branch of art criticism. You know, the same goes for the criticism of painting and music. Um, so objectivity, I think, is a bit overrated, and I think it is actually much more useful and much more helpful and much more honest to say that we can't help but approach
Mhm.
criticism in a subjective way. You know, French film critics respond to films in a very, very, very different way from American film critics and British film
Correct.
critics and Polish film critics. I mean, we know this, don't we? Like some directors, like, you know, Hitchcock was much, much more highly critically regarded in France than he was in America, etc., etc., etc. But I guess one thing that somebody in my position tries to do, somebody in your position tries to do, is we try to contextualize. We say, okay, this marine ozonic thing that you've presented me with, it may not be my cup of tea, but actually I can see that it's interesting that in this case the ozonic note has been married to this, that, and the
Mm.
other,
Mm.
because I'm not sure that's been done before. And actually here the marine note is less metallic than it, you know, so you start kind of like
Mm.
deconstructing it, and 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 I think it's absolutely legitimate and it's absolutely fine to respond to perfume in an emotional way and to present
Mhm.
your criticism in an emotional way. I mean, Luca Turin's and Tanya Sanchez's reviews, some of them are like poems, some of them are outpourings of emotion.
Mm.
Um, and yet they're also contextualized. And I think that's fine. I think that's absolutely okay.
I mean, just reviewing fragrances, it's like such a. I mean, it's one of the things that are really tied to emotions, right? Like, I think that that would be very difficult to stay that way. In fact, I find myself, like, I'm making the last remark, but I find myself sometimes if I like the perfumer and the brand, like the whole idea about the brand, I feel like that's kind of unconscious, subconscious bias in some ways that you end up being more, you know, generous to the brand, not generous in that, like in terms of reviewing it, right? Is that it? But then when they fall off, you know, if they do something or they come out something that is not whatever, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, what are they doing now? Then you start looking at the fragrances differently. It's just, I feel like the world is always, it's not what actually true out there. It's our own perception of things that it could be always skewed, right?
And we can't help but respond to things. It's like, I think one of the criticisms that was aimed at Luca Turin by some people was that he seemed to have a particular fondness for the perfumes of Calice Becker because she's his friend. And I thought, well, number one, we don't know what came first. What if she became his friend because he really admired her
Right.
work, and so that, and
Right.
so what if he likes her work because she's his friend? Maybe the whole thing that made them connect in a friendship is also the thing that made him connect with her work. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I don't see a problem in that.
Yeah.
So yes, perfumes are not made by robots, and I don't think they should be reviewed by robots.
Well, let's hope that that's not going to be where the future of perfumery goes. I feel because AI has been doing interesting stuff. Um, I don't want to keep you longer than I said I will. I am very respectful of your time. I know you're super, super busy. Thank you very much for
No,
accepting this.
thank you very, very much. It's been a real pleasure and a real honor to do this, and we should try doing it again sometime.
Oh my God. And I feel like I can talk to you forever. Like, honestly, it was just like flowed. And I
Yeah,
had the
because
list
I
of the
can just talk and
questions.
talk and talk and talk.
Like I had a list of questions and I didn't went by any of them. I'm just like on the script
Well,
anyway.
no, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for everyone who's watching. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.